Well, nice to have you, Bob. Thank you for doing this interview with us.
Oh, sure.
No problem. So, in case people don't know who he is, and it's unlikely, Bob's one of the leading modern day masters of science fiction and fantasy illustration, and he's won the Hugo Award. Is it 8 times?
Eight for the art and once for not best related book.
Ah, right, okay. And you've been nominated, is it 23 times, or has it gone up since?
Something like I have the highest amount of nominations, I
Ah,
think. I have to go back and check. It's somewhere between myself and Michael Whalen, and Whalen eventually fell off probably the mid 2000s or something, and I continued on through 2012 with
right.
nominations. So from 1988 to 2012, I was nominated, and then 1 year, 2 years, I was nominated for let's see, in the defunct Best Original Artwork category,
Ah,
which they just got rid of it. It was really not a good award to have because it was getting 7 votes and 10 votes, and it's just that kind of
yeah.
crazy low amount of things got things nominated, so they decided to just kill it completely, and I think that was a good idea.
Yeah.
And what happened was uh, I got the I think so it'd be like at last count I want to say it was something like maybe 28, 29 times,
Oh,
something like
wow.
if you build it all up. I don't I'd have to go back and look, but hey, look, I mean, I think it was like maybe somewhere between 27, maybe 27, 28,
Yeah.
and I won 9 times, so that's I
Oh,
looked at it like 1/3 of the time I won, so that's pretty good.
pretty cool. So how did it all come together then? When did you first realize you wanted to be an artist going right back?
Well, oh, go way back. Oh, yeah, I was 4 years old.
Oh,
I
wow.
My dad taught me to draw on a chalkboard because I was very ill when I was a child, and he taught me how to do perspective and line art. And then my
Hmm.
teachers started seeing this stuff I was drawing in school and arts classes and stuff. I was doing little cutouts and shapes and everything. And one art teacher took my mother aside and she said, "This boy's got a lot of talent. You need to encourage this." Well, she did, and she sent me to art classes and all
Hmm.
kinds of things, and drove me to art classes and got me into things. And then my dad, to his credit, he kind of sat me in front of Star Trek,
Hmm.
and and that kind of really changed. That was a game changer. And then my mother got me this thing called the Godzilla game, and that was a game changer. And so I just really grokked on to science fiction and fantasy at that point. And then the big game, the big life changer was the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. It just
Yeah.
They said to me, I went with a bunch of adults, and I was 9 years old, I was nine, and they said to me, "Well, if you don't understand this, maybe you could ask us." Well, guess who explained it all to them? Uh, and yeah, so that changed my life. That was a game changer for me. Was the 2001: A Space Odyssey, and from then on in, I collected comic books. I read Famous Monsters of Filmland. I read a lot of science fiction books.
Hmm.
I was really taken with a lot of the imagination of the time, and I watched a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows.
Hmm.
Space 1999, all the Jerry Anderson stuff, Thunderbirds, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Loved it. And so to me, I just dovetailed right into it, and I said, well, that's kind of what I'm going to do.
Right. And did you want to be an illustrator originally, or was it a different branch of art?
Well, it was kind of like I started seeing these book covers and started seeing these book cover paintings, and I thought to myself, that'd be pretty good to do something like that,
Yeah. Hmm.
and that would be really good to do something like that, wouldn't it? And
Yeah.
and so I did, and that's kind of took off from there for me.
Okay. And I know your parents encouraged you originally, but what did they think about you doing it for a living? Did they encourage that, or?
Well, my mother was always worried about, like, me making a living, that's kind of stuff. That art, that's a great living. And my
Hmm.
father was sort of objective about it. He basically said, whatever you do, just go 100% and do it.
Yeah.
And that is what I took to heart. And he just
Yeah.
said, always use common sense in all of it, and which I did.
Yeah.
And said, just use a lot of common sense, and if you're going to do it, do 150%. And so that's what I did, and it was an interesting thing, and I had a very interesting series of lucky things that happened, and this doesn't happen to everybody, and especially in this day and age, because this is pre-internet in the late 1970s. I saw an article on a local artist named Eric Ladd, and he was doing book jacket artwork. And I said, I'd love to contact this guy. So I contacted the paper, and he gave me the guy's number, and I went down to see him. And he showed me his paintings and his book cover artwork and all kinds of stuff. And he looked at my stuff. It was meager at the time, but he said, you'd be great showing your stuff at science fiction conventions. So that's what I did. And then he sort of like, it all took off from there, and I put drawings up mostly, and then the other guys came along and they said, well, now you need to paint. Just learn to paint and make it paint. I was already painting. I sold my first painting when I was 16 years old professionally. Right. So, that was pretty good. I mean, like at $50, that's a lot of comic books, and it was fun to do that kind of thing for someone and make it. Make it my best. Yeah. It was kind of a landscape I did for them, and they really liked it. It was historical to their family.
Right, I see. So you had a bit of art training, didn't you? I don't think you.
Yeah, I did some art classes when I was in school and high school and all that stuff, and they were fun. But then I went to Rhode Island College to study it seriously, and I got about two teachers I really liked. One was a guy named Sam Ames, and he was a painter, and he was a really good painter too. And then I met Enrico Pinardi, and he's not only a great sculptor, he's a great painter. He mostly sculpture though, but he really got science fiction. He got Frank Frazetta. He got H.R. Giger. He wasn't gonna look at me like like that as other places had when I mentioned that I liked. They call him the Franzetta guy. I don't know where the N comes from. Is a Franzetta, and I'm like, no, it's Frazetta.
Yeah. So how did when you first started going to these conventions, how did the work start to come from that?
Well, the conventions were cheap to go to. That was the important thing. These science fiction conventions. I went to one called Boscone, and it's still going to this day, but it was up in Boston. And I just found an old hotel bill from 40 years ago there in some old paperwork. And I'm going like, wow, I think I shared the room with somebody, and my end of it was $24 for the weekend. You know what I mean? And all I did was, and I think I made maybe $1,000 in the art show or something like that. So that was profit. It was great. And then what happened was a lot of publishers used to go to these things, and they had parties, and you had the old guard, you had Don Wollheim, you had Jim Bain, you had the Del Rey bunch, you had all these people in this burgeoning field, thanks to Star Wars, of science fiction literature and science fiction books. And what had happened was they were looking for book covers. They were looking for anybody that could paint a halfway decent book cover. So Jim Bain saw my paintings, and he said, I know these are kind of like long style type work, but he said, do you think you'd ever do paperback books? And I said, sure. I gave him his card, and then the next thing he knew, he bought a piece off me, stock art, and then he signed me a job to do. And wow, I was rolling. It was great. And I'd done some other things too. I'd worked for a small local free press doing political cartoons, and I'd done some other things for advertising firms, and I still do work for advertising firms. And then there was an educational publisher called Jamestown Publishers that they just used me all the time. That was like a regular job. It was awesome. And then but again, they all got bought. The publishing got condensed, and so it's not the world it was 40 years ago, and slightly depressing. It is more, it's sort of like you wake up every day and you feel like the world has changed on without you and moved on a little bit without you. And it's a little bit of a disconnect there for me. So yeah.
Well, I've always thought that your art style is there's an epic look to it all, very sort of classical painting look to it all. Were you influenced at all by any classical paintings?
Oh God, yeah. J.M.W. Turner. Turner is my favorite artist.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see, Gustave Doré, he's another one. He was an illustrator and a fine artist. He painted these stunning Scottish landscapes, which most people associate him with his etchings in the Bible and the etchings for Dante's Inferno. I think go look at his Scottish landscapes; they are incredible.
Okay. I will do.
And other ones, Francisco Goya is another one.
Hmm.
Let's oh, I could name dozens. John Constable is another one. I always liked how these guys painted, and Turner was just, I mean, he painted fantasy images. These guys were painting dragons and all kinds of stuff in the 17th and 18th century. It's just they didn't call it that then. They called it romantic or sublime. That's what they called it.
Right.
It wasn't called fantasy art. That came along later. So this thing goes way back. It goes way, way back. And everybody thinks it's a new thing, and it's not. It goes way, way back. And that's why I always liked that kind of thing. I always liked it.
And obviously, when people think of your name, I mean, you do other things as well, obviously, and you do them well. But people automatically think the word dragon when they think of your name. Well, I do anyway. And one thing that I like about your dragons is there seemed to be, when I was growing up in the 70s, most dragons you saw in illustration were sort of quite wimpy looking. They were very sort of slender, and yours are very meaty and beefy, aren't they? They look like they could take you in a fight, let's say. But the other ones,
I try to make. My whole dragon thing comes from the idea that these are like kaiju, which is a Japanese term for beast. And beasts, we don't know where they came from. They're not dinosaurs. They're not. They evolved in a whole different process than we did, and they came out of the ether, so to speak. And I mean, I love looking at the lore of dragons and like what dragons. What spurred the mythology of them and things like that. The whole. I think it's a St. George and the Dragon story. Very popular story in England. Very popular fable. It came from what, as I understand it, there's lots of sources of it, but there was one. It may have been that or another one. That came from what was thought to be a saltwater going crocodile, a giant, like 30 feet long, something like that.
Yeah.
And it got in a warm current possibly, and ended up in the coast of England somewhere.
Right.
And of course, it establishes a hunting ground, and the hunting ground in medieval times would have been a sheep pasture, or livestock. And so this thing was coming up out of the water and snatching these things, and they had to hire a guy to go in and kill this thing. Right. And there was apparently a report of an old medieval village that had a 6-foot-long giant crocodile skull hanging at its gate. Right. And they believe that was the whole origin of some dragon stories, and possibly George. Yeah. And it became sort of an old story that became like epic myth.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. I didn't know that. Do you think that, I mean, obviously, when you started painting, what sort of mediums were you using at the time? Because I know
at the time I started with acrylics. Everybody was using acrylics. It was fast. It was quick. Clean up easy. You could just wash the brushes and clean them up really fast. Pour away the wasted paint, the wasted water, and it was done. You were done. Wash your hands off, and you're done. And the piece dried very nicely too. So it's just something that I got into. And then of course my wife comes along, and she's working in oils already. And then a lot of other people are working in oils. And I started getting a little bit of like pro envy of them working in oils and how they made it work. So I just lit into doing these very small paintings that I could screw up easily if I had to and not feel bad about it. So that's how I did that. And then I finally took that one day and I said, I'm going to do a big painting in oils, and it came out great. It came out really great.
Cool.
So, and I'm thinking like, look, if these guys can do it, you can do it, Bob, so that's what I did.
Do you have any problems though with, because oil paint takes ages to dry, doesn't it? You can use drying agents, but do you have any problems with that, with deadlines and that sort of thing?
Not really, honestly. I use something called walnut oil. And walnut oil you can actually eat it. I wouldn't, but you can.
Right.
If you look it up, you can actually eat it. It's not like linseed oil or it's walnut oil. And apparently the drying properties of it can be a little bit better than linseed oil, because see, acrylics, when you paint them down, you mix them with water, the water evaporates, therefore the the actual the volume decreases as that's whereas when you use oil paint, the oil actually dries. The volume doesn't go away, the oil actually dries. That's why they look richer, that's why the brush strokes stay like they do, and so on.
Do you think oil gives you much more freedom to add certain effects? Like I love your water effects and your cloud effects. Do you think it's better to paint in oils for those sorts of things?
What is that? Oh,
So because oil takes a little bit longer to dry, obviously. So do you
yeah.
think that freedom to add? Because I like the way you do your clouds and your water effects. Do you think it's very good to do those things in oils? Is it better?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Water especially, because you get a great transparency to it.
yeah.
And my recipe for oils is a lot of green paints and a lot of, and they get darker to the bottom, but they get lighter as the top as the sun penetrates them. And the colors I use are viridian green. I use kind of a lime bright green, which I use. And another artist I really like, I'll bring out at this point, is a Russian artist called Ivan
Hmm.
Ivazovsky. And if you Google him, he does incredible transparent paintings of water and storms and ships and
Oh,
storms.
yeah, I'm familiar with them actually. Yeah,
And he's called the Russian Turner, is what he was called.
yeah.
And then I love Thomas Moran's work after he went to study with Turner, because he used to paint the American West mostly, and then he went over to England to study with Turner, and Turner showed him how to do the ocean and things like this, and he started doing ocean paintings, and they were just jaw dropping.
Ah, right. So let's say that someone came to you with a brief. It's happened a million times, and let's say it's for a book cover. Where do you go from that? How much research do you do into the actual book, and how do you start? What's your process?
Okay, basically, I'll get a book, and on a lot of cases, I don't even get the book. I get a synopsis of it.
Right, I see.
And then they say, well, we kind of like your style. We want you to do like kind of a spaceship for it,
Yeah.
which is a word and a half, because it could be any spaceship. So I have to have the background of it, and where it's going to be, and where the spaceship's going to be. I recently just did something like that I wasn't thrilled with the content of the book or the writer. And what he did was, though, he created his kind of a beautiful planet. And so I asked the publisher, what would you like me to do with this? And she said, look, let's just give me a nice spaceship, give me a really pretty picture. And that's
Mm.
what I did. And then they came along and they said, oh, this is one of the prettiest covers we've ever seen.
Right.
So the way things are working now is that the less you know about the book, the better.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually Jim Bain had an old story that he used to tell everybody. He said, my theory is read the book and forget it.
Good advice. Are there any books that you wish you'd been given the cover to do?
Well, I've been graced with I just did King Kong, which was
Hmm.
great, a fully illustrated book of King Kong. I have done all kinds. I probably more of the Arthur C. Clarke books, maybe. Some of those. Maybe some from Lord of the Rings. That have been kind of fun to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've got ideas for that and so on. So yeah.
You've worked as a concept artist as well, haven't you? On quite a
Yeah,
few
yeah. I worked
things.
as Jimmy Neutron. I worked on Star Trek, and I did a couple of concepts for that, for a black hole and a Klingon planet for a ride that Jonathan Frakes comes, and he comes out and he's filmed, and he says, I'm going to take you on the shuttle, and we're going to go through this ring thing and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so I created the ring planet, and it had to go before the Star Trek producers, and they picked mine. It was several concepts were introduced by other artists, and they picked mine.
Hmm.
And then I was off and running, and then I got asked to work on the movie Sphere,
Yeah.
which is from the Michael Crichton book,
Yeah.
and they made a film that bombed. And they wanted a black hole sequence where we get sucked into a black hole as part of a log entry, and it was going to be done with CG and all that. It was going to be done by Rhythm and Hughes Studios, and it turned out that Rhythm and Hughes had to dump the job. They had to say we can't do it, and what happened was Rhythm and Hughes it got inherited. It got inherited by another group called Kaiser Walznak, and they went in turn and used my concepts. They just didn't credit me. However, I'm not going to complain about the money I was paid. You know, I was paid a lot of money, which was great. And it's there. Everybody's seen it. I get emails going, "Is that Bob? I watched Sphere. Did you design that?" I was like, yeah, I did.
Oh, right.
Like that. Then
Yeah.
in 2000, John Davis called me out of the blue and he gave me the job of working as a concept artist on his film Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, which is going to be an animated movie. And I had a blast on that. I worked with the best people. And then he asked me to come aboard for the Ant Bully. And then he asked me to come aboard for the next one called The Seahorse, which never got off the ground, unfortunately.
Right.
And so it was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of fun to do those. And then I did some work on a very small film from Japan called The Idol. And when I say work, it didn't pay very much. It didn't pay anything. And but it was kind of a fun thing to do, have my matte paintings in it and stuff like that. It's a fairly fun little film. Norman England directed it. It's a very fun little movie.
You've released quite a few books of your own work, haven't you? And now 2 books as well.
Yeah, the days when you could do those things, paper tiger books, they were incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple myself, actually. Why did
Alien Horizons, Greetings from Earth, The Book of the Sea Monsters, Dragon Henge, Star Dragons, and then I had another one of Primal Darkness, and that was through Steve Jackson Games. They all did really well. I mean, they Alien Horizons was something like 40,000 copies, which was a lot in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then Book of the Sea Monster was even higher. That was close to 50. And then Greetings from Earth was in the 15 or 20 or something like that. And it just it was a sort of a different time. It was like we didn't really have the internet as well, so people had to buy books, and they got books to see these things in, you know.
Yeah. Going to that really. So it was sort of towards the end of the 90s, wasn't it, where the internet was sort of taking over. Do you think that's had a detrimental effect on many things, including your own sort of work as well?
Yeah, it was, to the point because it made things less impressive. When a book came in the mail, you went, "Ooh, wow, it's a book."
Yeah.
You know, whereas like something pops up on screen, it's like, like that. You know, you just look at it and whatever. And yeah, it's kind of a fun it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing that has happened in this age of the internet and the age of things online, as everything's virtual. And you know, I personally like books. I mean, when you back me, I got CDs. I like the actual physical media because I like to be able to have it and own it, not some computer take it away from me after a while.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a shopping experience. I think, and it's the same with music. Like you said, it's I miss going to, I buy a lot of things online, but I miss going to, especially as a teenager, just getting on the bus, going to a shopping centre, going to a bookstore or a record store. And it's the happy accidents, isn't it? It's like you're just leafing through things and you find something by accident and you think, brilliant, I'll just try this. Or could be bad music, but the thrill is finding out when you get home. Or the book covers, you just see all these different book covers. It's not the same online, is it? It's not the same impact, like you said, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Where was I going with this? Digital art. What's your feelings about digital art? Because obviously that came around about the same time.
I like some of it. Like one of my favorite digital artists is Justin Sweet. He's a phenomenal artist, and he is able to. He went back to learn how to do oil painting after doing digital,
right?
And his oil paintings are fabulous too. And he's the nicest guy too. He's a terribly nice guy. There's several others artists I can name that I think are very good in digital, and they do a really good job. The only trouble I always have with the digital is that I like it printed out, or I like a hard copy of it, because I worry about it being in a box that could get fried, or being in a cloud that could get burst, this sort of thing. And since somebody says, "Oh, I put all my music in a computer, in a cloud," it's like, yeah, it's someone else's computer. And that's what kind of bothers me about it. When Roger Dean, who is a friend of mine, he had this great view of things. He said, when we did a record album came out, the Yes album covers, remember those?
Yeah.
The 1970s was the time of an album cover art. you know.
Yeah.
Queen, Queen's News of the World that Kelly Frias painted. And, you know, that was a fun story because Queen was there's some of them were science fiction fans, and especially
Hmm.
Brian May and then Roger Deakins, I believe. And they kind of called up Kelly and they said, you know, we'd like to use your old Astounding cover from 1962. We'd like to use it as part of a thing we're doing on a new album cover. And it was a robot holding these broken figures like this, and he's kind of forlorn looking. Well, Kelly goes, well, you know, this is the way Kelly would be. He'd say, well, let me just paint you a whole new one. And how about I put you guys in the claws? And that's what he did. And
Okay.
and it created this big hit. And then he came up with another idea for them, and they liked that so much they use that as the interior piece. So you can open up the thing, which brought me to what Roger Dean is talking about, whereas a record album, you take a record album, and it is a gift. It is an item, you know. Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy by Elton John.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Double album, concept album. You opened it up, and comic books and posters and everything fell out of one sleeve of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I remember.
what a gift it was, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember getting that in 1975. My grandmother gave it to me in English. So my mother is English, and my mother's British, from London. My grandmother's from London, and so on. And the family on her side is all from London, so we were in London a lot. And she turned it into kind of it was just like, I got very into that kind of stuff, and I like the physical. So when you got a record album, you felt like you got a real present. And now it's like Spotify.
Yeah, it's not the same as it at all.
Yeah, groups put out brand new songs that aren't even listed. They're not even on an album or a CD. It's like that you got to like download it or whatever. And I don't know. There's something about that really concerns me. And it's the same way with movies. I know loads. In the wall facing this, you can't see it, but I've got a hold on.
Oh wow, that's a collection.
Those are all my DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff. Not every, but a lot of them. And it's double bank too. And the thing is, I like owning the physical media, and some of them in there are not available as streaming. You can't get them streaming.
Yeah.
And so that's my argument with sort of the whole digital revolution, is that it's fine used as a servant, as Spock said it in the episode of The Ultimate Computer. He said, I find computers efficient servants, but I would never want to serve under one. And
good point.
And that's exactly how I see about it. It's a great tool when you can make it work for you. I have done digital art for sketches, for things that I'm going to do. I do a drawing, put it in, and then I just start to work over it with color and see what it looks like and see how it looks.
Have you ever been asked to do an album cover yourself?
Yeah, I did. I just did one. I did one in 2020 for a group called Stalker. And they're a New Zealand screech metal band, and the guy out of the blue, and they had the money. It was good, and they wanted a kind of a skull monster and some semi-naked lady, and it worked out in the end of the world, all the world burning up and everything. And so I did a real nice painting for them, and they absolutely loved it, and they paid for it and all that, and it got around the world. It got in the best of heavy metal artwork that came out over in England as a book, and it got everywhere. It was like they had a party, and they had posters and T-shirts of it and everything down in New Zealand, which was kind of fun. And then recently, a heavy metal group called Helm's Deep contacted me, and they bought an old painting from 30 years ago. They wanted to cover. Yeah.
How much do you get involved with all the Comic Cons and things like that now?
Oh, I go to a lot. I go to the ones I can go to that I'm invited to. I'm going to one in the March weekend, first weekend, Boxborough, Mass, and that should be fun to do. They're nice people. There's one in a couple in Boston I might go to. That sort of thing. As long as I can drive there, that's the key to it, is driving there. Because flying is just really problematic. You had to haul all your crap with you and all that stuff like that. So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, but I enjoy them a lot. I do really well at them. When I sell prints and stuff, I do really well.
Right. Brilliant. Well, thank you for doing this chat. It's been
Yeah,
really
no
interesting.
problem. I loved it.
Excellent. It's been really interesting. Well, thanks again, and I'll let you know when it's out and give you a
Great.
head.
I'll post it, and we'll post it, and be great. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks again, Bob. You take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
See you, mate. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.